97 of your math journal. Let's call it area of composite figures. A composite figure means that you've got more than one shape put together. So when you have a composite figure such as this, you want to split it into shapes that you know. So what I want you to do is I want you to write a diagnosis. This is not a shape that you're aware of doing. However, what shapes, how could you get this shape? Sometimes it's putting two together, sometimes it's taking them apart. So here, my diagnosis is it's a trapezoid plus a rectangle. Well, if that's the case, I need to separate the trapezoid and the rectangle, find their areas, and then put it together. So I'm going to dissect this picture that we pasted in our journals in class the other day. So right here, they've already kind of got a dotted line showing where these have been put together. This entire thing is 4. So if I'm cutting it apart, I need to make sure that I cut this as well. So if I cut this, this is no longer 4. 4 is the entire thing. If this is 1.5, then that means this is now 1.5 if I've cut it. That means that this is 2.5 or 2.5 in order to get 4. So looking here, my trapezoid has a base of 3. So I want to actually draw them again. So I'm taking apart the pieces. So I'm going to take this, and the two things I need to know is this is 1, this is 1.5, because I need to know the bases and the heights, and this is 3. And I'm adding that to a rectangle. And now I want the measurements of the rectangle. The rectangle is 3 by 2.5. Okay, area of a trapezoid. I add the bases together. So 1 plus 3 times the height times 1.5, and then I divide that by 2. Area of a rectangle is just base times height. So you can see where each of those pieces comes from. So here, this would be 4. 4 times 1.5 divided by 2. So 4 times 1.5. Because of the, to make this easier for me to do mental math, I'm just going to use the commutative property and I'm going to flip that. So I can change this to be 1.5 here times 4 divided by 2. And the reason I want to do that is because it's going to be easy for me to do this division. 4 divided by 2 is 2, and then 1.5 times 2 is going to give me 3. Okay, so that is the area of the trapezoid here. 3 times 2.5. 3 times 5 is 15. Regroup 1. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 is 7. So the area of the triangle, or the rectangle, is 7.5. So 3 plus 7.5 gives me a total area of 10.5 units squared. That is the area of this shape. Okay, now let's come up with a diagnosis for this shape. So how did this shape come to become this? Now remember, there is more than one right way to get your answers. I think some of you might see 2 trapezoids, some of you might see 3 triangles you can make here. I personally see a big trapezoid that they took a small trapezoid out of. So my diagnosis, the way I choose to see this, is a big trapezoid minus a little one. I'm just going to write trap for short. Okay, so I'm going to be doing this big one minus the small one. So let's look at our area here. So area of a trapezoid would be the big one. We need two bases, so look at your trapezoid. We have this parallel side and this parallel side. 8 and 4, and the height, if this is 2 and this is 5, the entire thing was, or sorry, 2 and 3, the entire thing was 5. So base 1, 4, plus base 2, 8, times by the height, which is 5, divided by 2, and I'm going to be minusing that from this trapezoid. So this trapezoid, I have base 1 and base 2, and that height is 2. So 4 plus 2, base 1 plus base 2, times the height, 2, divided by 2. Okay, I'm going to take one at a time. 4 plus 8 is 12. 12 times 5 divided by 2. Well, I'm going to switch this around and make it 5 times 12. Divide by 2 just to make it easier. Or I could have just gotten 60. Anyway, 12 divided by 2 is 6. 6 times 5 is 30. Or I could have gotten 60 and then divide by 2 and still gotten 30. So the area of the big one is 30. But then I'm taking out the small one. 4 plus 2 is 6. Times 2 divided by 2. Okay, 6 times 2 is 12. 12 divided by 2 is 6. So 30 minus 6 gives me an area of 24 units squared. There's the big trapezoid minus the little trapezoid to get me this shaded space. Okay, now this one, I want you to, we're going to look at it two different ways. We're going to look at it put together, and we're going to look at it separated. So here, I want you to draw a line, and I'm not going to write as much words. But I'm going to split this in half, and I'm going to write this one. This diagnosis is 3 rectangles added. And this one is going to be a big rectangle minus a little rectangle. There's two ways we can look at this, and so I'm just going to help you see both. So looking at this, I can see this big rectangle minus this little rectangle. Or I could cut it here and have 3 rectangles. So if I'm going to do the 3 rectangles, I'm going to look at this top rectangle. There's actually more than one way you can look at it added as well. So if I take and I cut it, I'm going to show you where I'm cutting it. So if I cut it right there and right there, here's going to be rectangle 1, rectangle 2, and rectangle 3. So I need to have, let's look at rectangle 1. If I cut it right there, it's 5 times 3. So I'm going to do area of the first one is 5 times 3, and that gives me 15. Rectangle 2, this whole thing, I need a length and a width. So if this whole thing is 7, but I cut it here, this is 5. So if I cut 7, I've cut it into 5, and what would be left? 2. So this would be 2. Now here, I don't have something saying how tall this is, but I know that this is 3, this is 4, and this is 2. So the whole thing has to be 3, 4, and 2 together. So 3 plus 4 is 7, plus 2 is 9. This is going to be 9 feet. So area of the second rectangle is going to be 9 times 2, which is 18. That leaves me with my third rectangle, which is 5 by 2. So 5 times 2 is 10. Now, if you cut it differently, if you would have cut it this way, you could do that as well. You just have to make sure that your rectangles match. That's why I label mine and make sure I have the right dimensions. Now I'm just going to add it together. So adding the 3 rectangles together. 5 plus 8 is 13, plus 0 would be still 13. Regroup 1. 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 is 4. So I can look at the area this way and say there are 43 units square in this entire shape. Now if I want to look at it minusing, I can do the big rectangle minus the little rectangle. Well, I've already decided that this length of the big, or the height of this big rectangle is 9. This was 7. So the big rectangle would be 9 times 7, which is 63. But then I decided I needed to minus the little rectangle. So let's find the area of the little rectangle. The little one in here that got taken out was 4 times 5. And 4 times 5 equals 20, but I'm subtracting the big one minus the little one, and that leaves me with 3. So either way, I get 43 units squared. And this is why I want you to come up with a diagnosis so you can tell me what you're thinking and then how you're going to go about solving it.